Okay, this is the other TVP. Again, I've got an 80% win rate in TVP. TVP is crazy easy. All you have to do is learn the 2-1-1 build, practice it against a very easy AI until you can do it perfectly every time, and then take it to the ladder and just basically A-move with your auto-repairing workers and your medevacs floating overhead and siege up your tanks, and then you just kind of win. So, what TVP tends to come down to when you do it this way is how big is your army when you push. Did you push too late? Did you lose to some sort of aggression from the Protoss because you didn't get enough bunkers? And then did you have enough army? Those are like the only three ways you can lose, right? So just gonna go to 10 minutes, see what you had. So obviously you lost to Stalkers. Now Stalkers are the worst unit that Protoss has. Statistically, they're just really, really bad. But they're very easy to spend money on because they cost a ratio of 2.5 to 1 minerals to gas, which means you can take 2 gas really early and not get a ton of probes on minerals. See how he's not fully saturated on minerals, and then just pump nothing but Stalkers and spend a lot of money. So he spent $3,300 on army at 9 minutes, which is a crazy huge amount of money to have spent that early in the game. And the reason that he was able to do that is because he cut workers. He made 26 workers and didn't make any more. So his army is huge. It's massive. And at 9 minutes, your army should be 2750, and instead it's 1750. So you're $1,000 behind, and he's $500 ahead. And you just kind of walked out and suicided your army. So that's the end of this game. I will go on to 10 minutes and see, but obviously when you lost your army, you threw down this eBay and this expansion, and you're not even trying to hit the army benchmarks anymore. So you continue to be about $1,000 behind here at 10 minutes. And looks like he's just going to keep making Stalkers. So you actually have a decent chance to be able to push him back and take your expo, because he's making stupid units and he's not teching to area of effect stuff. But because you got so far behind on that first engagement and you're stuck on one base for so long, it kind of all depends on what you do. So like right now, when he has force fields, if you walk to the bottom of this ramp, it's going to be one of your Marauders and one of your tanks shooting while he gets to kill all of your infantry. So that's bad. Don't be doing that. And you feel, it looks like you feel a desperation to get your expo mining, which is an illusion because he never expanded either. So you're actually ahead of him. You've pulled more money out of the ground than he has, and you just haven't spent it. I mean, you've got $2,000 in the bank. So you do a drop over here, but don't kill any workers. There you go. Now you wipe out his entire worker force, and then all you have to do is survive his attack, and you win, but you don't survive his attack, so you lose. So this, again, this is why you shouldn't have brought the Marauders down. Like, as soon as you abandon your base with 8 Marines and a medevac, when that's a big portion of your army, now you're even more defensive than normal. So you want to throw down additional bunkers and salvage them when you become strong again. A lot of TVP is specifically is about knowing when you're strong and when you're weak. So anytime your whole army isn't in one place, by definition you're weak. So you want to be defensive. Anytime he has warp gate tech and you don't have medevacs and stim, you're weak. And anytime he doesn't have warp gate tech and he's on your side of the map, you're strong and stuff like that. So anyway, lots of weird things happened in the later game, but this was all basically decided at 9 minutes when you left your base with a very small army and died for no reason. So again, looking at benchmarks, we're looking for 24 workers at this point. We have 22, so we're too short, and we're looking for $1,000 of army, and we have 675. Way too little. We're $325 behind on army spending there. And at 7 minutes, again, we're looking for 1,500, and we've got 1,000. 1,300, because we include the bunker in this. So this isn't terrible. You're still behind 200. Now we're looking for 2,000, and you've got 15, 16, 17, 18. So this is close. You're close. At 9 minutes, we're looking for 2750, and this is the first time when we're looking to have spent $750 in the last minute instead of 500. So this is a really critical moment. The 9 and 10 minute marks are when you really beef up your army. So for at 6 minutes you get 1,000, and then you spend 500 more and 500 more and 500 more, And then at 9 minutes, for the first time, you're supposed to spend 750 instead of 500, so 50% more. And then 750 again, and that gets you to 10 minutes, and now you have this huge army. So if you don't ramp up your production like that, then at 9 minutes you end up with this tiny army, which is 1750 plus 400 is 2150, which is really far behind, $600 behind what you should have. So aside from the build, which we'll talk about later, we'll fix this build and do it properly. But aside from the build, even just assuming that this build that you did was the build you wanted to do, and you just want to know how to win with the units that you actually had, first of all, I don't think it's possible, because you had a tiny army compared to his huge army. But second, you never want to do what you did, which is to leave this bunker up and have a starport just completing that hasn't produced any units, and then walk across the field, right? So there are some indications that you can get as to whether you're strong or not. One of them, if you've built a building that hasn't done anything yet, you're weak, by definition. If you have a bunch of money in the bank, which I don't think you did at this point, then you're weak. If you have multiple bunkers or bunkers and turrets that obviously aren't going to be able to participate in the battle because now you're walking across the field, then that also makes you weak. And this weakness it gets less and less significant as the game goes on, right? Like, this is $100 that won't be participating in the fight. And if you salvage it, then okay, fine, but just because you salvage the bunker doesn't mean you then spend those 75 minerals on 1.5 more Marines. It doesn't turn from money back into army for a long time until you actually build Marines out of it. So you can't just salvage the bunker and then go. You have to salvage the bunker and then build Marines and then go. Anyway, so couple indications that we're weak at this point. And then we run into the problem that you just spent about 25 seconds walking from your base over to where he is, and because he's using the warpin thing, he doesn't spend any time walking from his base to here. So during this period of time, from 6 minutes when Warp Gate Tech finishes until like 10 minutes, or actually for the rest of the game, Protoss is always going to have this spending advantage over you because he doesn't have to walk his army anywhere. He can warp in right wherever he's going to fight. And that means that you're just always going to have a smaller army than him. So there are no good 8-minute timing attacks in TVP because it's just a racial design. He's always more powerful than you from 6 minutes until 10 minutes. And you make up for that by having a tech advantage. You make up for that by getting medevacs and having STEM. Or getting medevacs and having siege tanks with siege mode. You beat him on composition, not on army size, because he's going to always have that warp-in thing. Now consider that if each round of his warp-ins is $400, then that means he's going to be $400 ahead. Okay, so at 8 minutes, we're looking at a $2,000 army for both of us, and if he's $400 ahead in a $2,000 scenario, that's like 20% ahead. That's a big deal. But then at 10 minutes, both of us have like almost a $4,000 army. So if he's getting an additional $400 advantage from the warp-in mechanic, that's a much smaller deal. 400 versus 4,000 is now 10% instead of 20% advantage. So that's why you really don't want to go too early. You want to wait until 10 minutes and then go. But you also don't want to go too late, because if he gets Colossus and Psystorm, then you're also in big trouble. So really that little window from 9:30 to 10:30 is when you have to be fighting. Anyway, so don't build a starport and then attack before using it. That's just crazy. Yeah, so I don't know. I think that's enough about this game. So this TVT is kind of the same thing, and I made pretty graphs. If you ignore, so we look right here. First, we look at the standards. If you're one base all-inning, right? So basically the TVP build that I talked about, 211. You're going to get 21 workers at 5 minutes, 25 at 6 minutes, 28 at 7 minutes, 35 and 42 and 49 and 56, and so you're going to make exactly the same number of workers per minute up until 70, and then you're going to cut, because why make more at that point? Your army size is going to increase by 500, then 400, then 400, then 200, then 700. Okay, this has got to be wrong. Yeah, this is totally wrong. This is standard 2 base. This is standard 1 base. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong column. So yeah, 500, then 1,000. So see the difference between 0 and 500 is 500. The difference between 500 and 1,000 is 500. So each minute, this is your budget each minute. 500, then 500, then 500, then 500, then 750, then 750, then 750, then 750, then 750, then 750, like that. Very, very easy to predict. So if we look at your own games and we just look at what the budget is, the amount of money that you spent in the last minute, all we have to do is fast forward to 5 minutes and then just compare it to that standard, because we know like you should be spending 500 a minute. And what we're going to see is that you're nowhere close to that, and that's kind of to be expected because you're doing a marine fast expand, right? The faster you expand, there's just going to be a period of time where you're not going to have any army, and you're going to make up for that with bunkers and positioning and all that kind of stuff. So at 5 minutes, we have a $150 army instead of 500. So this is I put this in right here. So very small army here. That's why it's red. It shows up green when it's big, and it shows up red when it's small. So then at 6 minutes, our army size is just going to be 350. So actually, including the bunker, it's 400. Again, very small. So basically, the point is, when you did the Marine Fast Expand, you're supposed to have like a 500, and then 400 more, and then 400 more, and then 200 more, and then be on 750 at the 9 minute mark, and stay with 750 for a long time, and then go up to 1,000 because you expanded. So you're supposed to have a small army for 3 minutes, and then you're supposed to catch up and have a big army from then on, right? And what we can see from the army size of your game is that you were behind for the first 4 minutes, like you're supposed to be, and then you did catch up to 550, which isn't 750, but it's better than nothing. But then you're still kind of falling behind at 10 minutes, and then you do eventually at 11 minutes catch up. So you end up with eventually this really big army budget like you're supposed to. But there's this big vulnerability. For the first 10 minutes, your total army production for the first 10 minutes is only 1,700. That's tiny. It's tiny. It's tiny. So even though eventually you catch up on army budget at 11 minutes, 900 plus 1,700 is still only 2,600. So we're expecting to have a $4,500 army at 12 minutes, for example, and you have a 3,400. So it's just really small, and it doesn't catch up at all, ever. So even at 15 minutes, you're still more than $1,000 behind the standard 1 base benchmark, the 2 base benchmark, and the Uber Ups benchmark, which is just a super fast expand benchmark. So we're looking for 9,000 best case, 7,250 worst case, and you have 6,300. So your army just, again, you don't have a worker problem. This is your workers. You had 20, then 25. So this first 20 is a little bit off. It's 20 instead of 25. But by 10 minutes, you're basically caught up. You've got 45 instead of 39 and 47 instead of 43. So you're doing better than the one basing benchmark. You're getting a lot of money, is my point. But you're not spending that money on your army. What you're spending it on is non-army things. So anything, a lot of, like I said, all of StarCraft 2 comes down to how big your army was right when the game ended. And so you got to look at what you had that wasn't part of your army that you spent money on, and question, was it worth it to get that in the first place? Because a lot of times you'll see people in lower leagues say things like, oh man, if you'd had a tank in siege mode and 2 bunkers back home when he counterattacked, you would have won. But the problem with statements like that is, if you're leaving 2 full bunkers at home when you move out with these Marines, no matter what these Marines encounter, it's going to be bad, right? Because either they're going to encounter a tiny army from your opponent and do a little bit of damage, but that means the rest of his army is somewhere else, or they're going to encounter a huge army from your opponent and just all die and not kill anything. So that's what happens in this game. Your army isn't all in a ball. You hear a lot of people complaining about how StarCraft 2 is all about the death ball, and you can complain about it or not complain about it to your heart's content, but the point is that it's true. StarCraft is all about the death ball. You have to have every single unit you have, every single mineral and gas that you've spent has to contribute to one tiny local army, local engagement. So you set up kind of a fail turret ring. You just have 1 turret, and it does manage to kill off a medevac because your opponent is silly. But this drop does a bunch of damage. Dun, 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 dun. So these units, like, they're not part of the local fight. So this first fight, you've got a third of your army here, a third of your army here, and then the only 1/3 of your army is actually fighting. And you've even got several siege tanks and marines down here that aren't fighting either. So, just like the first TVP we watched, it's a death ball problem. You're not death balling. You need to get every single penny that you spent into a ball and use it to death him. So, I hope that makes sense. So obviously in all of these games your money has gotten pretty high, and that's a big deal, and that's something that you should work on consistently. But the bigger deal is just what you're doing with your money. You tend to, like, this is too many racks, and yet you also didn't spend your money. Like, it's a catch-22, because if you can't spend your money, you obviously need more buildings. But if you have too many buildings, it makes your army smaller. So put reactors on the racks you make is the point, and constantly use them and never supply block. So the game, again, you always just want to go to the first point at which something went terribly wrong and kind of stop. There's never a point in watching the rest of the game when you're already down 1,000, because even if you won, it was just because your opponent sucked. So we're already at that point at 13 minutes. So if we want to go back and compare what we did to our opponent, we can say, actually, I did better in every category than my opponent. So why did I lose $1,000 more than he did? It's just the separation of army. My army was too spread out. It needs to be in a death ball, and it needs to kick his ass. The secondary reason is just the turret ring. Although if you'd had a good turret ring, which would be a turret here and then a turret here. So by putting a turret here, he can't get by you on this side. So now you're completely off limits for the range of that turret. Nobody can come into your base from this angle. So then you put another turret up here that says nobody can come into my base from this angle. So now this entire portion of your base is just completely off limits. And then you put another turret here and it says nobody can come into my base from this angle. And you join them up and you make a ring of turrets. And now you're just completely immune to any sort of drop from this angle. Then you can put your whole army here and keep like a scouting marine here and here. And you'll know when his army walks to here, you'll know where it is, and you can say, okay, I need to go meet it in the fields, or okay, I need to hide behind my bunkers, or okay, he's going to drop me, so I need to keep my marines in this position, or whatever. But the point is, you put your army in a giant ball, and whatever he does, you meet his army with your army, because he's making the same mistake as you. Like, he did a double medevac drop when he had more than double that amount of actual army. So all of these troops are not participating in this fight. So this actually should have gone really well for you, because he made that mistake. The problem is that you made it to an even greater degree. So yeah, don't spread your army out and get turret rings. And look at this cuteness. So anyway, I just wanted to show you a little more about this graph, because this is a spreadsheet that you have access to that you can enter stuff in whenever you play a game and you notice that you had a smaller army and you're like, well, why did I have a smaller army? And this is, the red line is your military budget, right? It should be 500, 500, 500, 750, 750, 750, right? And so yours was just well below the red line for a long time, and then in the later portion of the game, your army budget is actually a lot higher. Anyway, next game.